Americans are packing up and moving at a speed we haven't seen in generations. Over just the last 4 years, a massive reshuffling has transformed the U.S. map. Families are abandoning long-held roots, and professionals are walking away from cities that once promised endless opportunity. The data is clear. Millions are voting with their feet. But why? It's not just wanderlust. For many, the math simply stopped adding up. Runaway housing costs have severed the link between wages and homeownership. In other regions, rising taxes, insurance spikes, and stagnant local economies have made staying put impossible. Add in growing climate risks, and you have a perfect storm forcing an exodus. Today, we're breaking down the top 12 states losing the most residents. We'll uncover exactly what broke the camel's back and where everyone is going instead. Let's dive into the numbers redefining America. 12. Ohio. The fading allure of Midwest affordability. Ohio has long held a reputation as the dependable heart of the Midwest, a place where the American dream was affordable, achievable, and steeped in community values. It is a state that feels familiar, where neighborhoods are tight-knit and the pace of life is manageable. However, beneath this veneer of stability, significant cracks have formed. Between April 2020 and July 2024, the state experienced a net domestic migration loss of approximately 38,000 residents. While this number might not seem catastrophic at a glance, it represents a persistent, slow-motion leak that signals deeper structural issues within the state's demographics and economy. The narrative that Ohio is a permanent home for families is being challenged by a new reality where affordability alone is no longer enough to keep people rooted. The primary driver of this exodus remains the struggle within Ohio's industrial identity. Historic manufacturing hubs like Cleveland, Youngstown, and Toledo are still grappling with a decades-long transition away from heavy industry. While there have been revitalization efforts, the scars of factory closures and economic stagnation run deep. These cities face the compounding challenges of aging infrastructure and downtowns that have yet to fully recover their vibrancy. Even Columbus, which stands out as a beacon of growth attracting tech startups and insurance giants, cannot single-handedly offset the population drain occurring in the rest of the state. The momentum in the capital is real, but it isn't powerful enough to anchor the entire state's population, particularly when rural and post-industrial areas continue to shed residents. For younger generations, the decision to leave is often a calculated career move. Recent graduates and professionals in their late 20s look at the trajectory of their careers in Ohio and see a ceiling. They compare their prospects with the explosive growth happening in the Sun Belt or the tech-heavy corridors of the West. Fields like advanced engineering, biotechnology, and high-level logistics offer more aggressive salary bands and rapid advancement opportunities outside of Ohio's borders. When a young professional realizes they can earn significantly more elsewhere while escaping the Rust Belt stigma, the choice becomes pragmatic. It isn't that they dislike Ohio, it is simply that other states offer a more dynamic professional landscape that aligns better with modern ambition. The climate plays a substantial, often underestimated role in this migration pattern. Ohio winters are not just cold, they are persistently gray, often stretching from November well into April. The psychological toll of months without significant sunshine, combined with the physical hassle of lake-effect snow and icy roads, pushes many residents to their breaking point. As remote work becomes more common, the necessity of enduring a harsh Midwest winter has vanished for many. People are trading gray skies and heating bills for regions where outdoor lifestyles are possible year-round. Ultimately, while Ohio isn't collapsing, it is losing ground to states that offer a more compelling mix of modern economic opportunity and a brighter, warmer quality of life. 11. Minnesota, the breaking point for the northern middle class. Minnesota presents a fascinating paradox in the current migration landscape. On paper, it is a state that does everything right. It consistently tops national rankings for quality of life, healthcare access, and education standards. Yet, the data tells a conflicting story. From April 2020 to July 2024, the state lost nearly 48,000 residents to domestic migration. This disconnect suggests that high quality of life scores do not always translate to resident retention. The twin cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul offer incredible cultural amenities, a robust park system, and the headquarters of major Fortune 500 companies. However, the cost of maintaining this high-service society is becoming a burden that many residents are no longer willing or able to bear. The financial strain on the middle class is a major catalyst for this departure. Minnesota is not a low-tax state, Residents face a combination of high state income taxes, sales taxes, and property taxes that can feel punishing, particularly when compared to neighboring states or the low-tax havens of the South. For a young couple looking to buy their first home or a growing family trying to save for college, the math is increasingly difficult. The housing market in the Twin Cities has appreciated to levels that rival coastal metros, yet wages haven't always kept pace with the rising cost of living. Consequently, many are looking across the border to Wisconsin or the Dakotas, or further afield to Tennessee and Texas, where their paycheck stretches significantly further. Weather is the second undeniable factor driving people away. To say Minnesota is cold is an understatement. The winters are a defining, endurance-based event. We are talking about months of sub-zero temperatures, dangerous wind chills, and darkness that consumes the late afternoon. For decades, residents wore this resilience as a badge of honor. However, as the population ages and younger workers prioritize mental well-being, the tolerance for survival mode winters is waning. The emotional tax of being housebound for months due to extreme cold is real. When you combine this with the financial costs of heating a home and maintaining vehicles in salt-heavy conditions, the appeal of a milder climate becomes overwhelming. Furthermore, the social and political climate has shifted since following periods of intense civil unrest and debates over public safety. The cohesive social fabric that Minnesota was famous for has felt strained to some residents. While perspectives on this vary widely, a segment of the population has chosen to leave in search of environments that feel more predictable or politically aligned with their personal values. Whether motivated by tax policies, public safety concerns, or simply a desire to escape the brutal climate, thousands of Minnesotans have decided that the good life the state promises is no longer worth the premium price tag attached to it. 10. Pennsylvania, why history can't compete with economic reality. Pennsylvania serves as a poignant example of how deep-rooted history and tradition can struggle against the tides of modern economic shifting. It is a state with a profound sense of identity, from the steel history of Pittsburgh to the colonial roots of Philadelphia. Yet, between April 2020 and July 2024, the Keystone State saw a net exit of roughly 49,000 residents. This isn't a sudden collapse, but rather the continuation of a long-term trend that has been eroding the state's population base for years. The core issue is that for many residents, sentimental attachment to their home state cannot pay the bills or secure a prosperous future. The economic landscape of Pennsylvania remains uneven, haunted by the ghosts of its industrial past. While healthcare and education sectors have grown, vast swathes of the state, including cities like Johnstown, Erie, Scranton, and rural areas, are still fighting the slow decline of manufacturing. These communities often lack the diverse job markets required to retain young talent. Pennsylvania is home to incredible universities, yet it suffers from a significant brain drain. Students come to study but leave shortly after graduation because the entry-level opportunities in tech, finance, and green energy are far more abundant and lucrative in the South and West. Once these young professionals establish roots elsewhere, they rarely return, leading to a demographic gap that is hard to fill. The tax structure in Pennsylvania also plays a complicated role in the exodus. While the state boasts a flat income tax that appears reasonable on the surface, the reality of the total tax burden is much heavier. Residents often face a complex web of local wage taxes, high property taxes, and school district levies that vary wildly from one zip code to the next. In many older communities, taxes are rising to cover aging infrastructure and pension obligations, even as services remain stagnant. For middle-income households, this creates a scenario where they feel they are paying a premium to live in areas that are not economically appreciating. Moving to a state with a simpler, lower tax burden is often an immediate raise for a working family. Additionally, the demographic shift is being accelerated by retirees. Pennsylvania has one of the oldest populations in the country. As these residents reach retirement age, they are increasingly opting to sell their homes and move to tax-friendly, warmer states like Florida or the Carolinas. They are trading icy driveways and high property taxes for coastal living and financial efficiency. This departure of the older generation, combined with the failure to retain the younger generation, creates a cycle of stagnation. Pennsylvania remains culturally rich and strategically located, but without a significant overhaul in economic dynamism and affordability, it continues to lose its most valuable resource: its people. 9. Hawaii, Paradise lost to the cost of living crisis. Hawaii occupies a unique place in the American imagination as the ultimate dream destination. It offers a lifestyle defined by turquoise waters, volcanic majesty, and a relaxed pace that seems worlds away from the mainland grind. However, the reality for those trying to build a life there is starkly different. From April 2020 to July 2024, Hawaii lost more than 50,000 residents through net domestic migration. When adjusted for its relatively small population size, this is one of the most severe per capita declines in the nation. The tragedy of this exodus is that it is largely involuntary. People aren't leaving because they want to, but because they can no longer afford to survive in their own home. The cost of housing is the primary catalyst for this displacement. In many parts of the islands, the concept of homeownership has become a fantasy for the average worker. Modest. Older homes often list for well over $1 million, and rental prices have surged past what local service industry wages can support. This housing crisis forces multiple generations to live under one roof, not just by cultural choice, but by financial necessity. When families look at the real estate markets in Texas or Nevada, where they can buy a spacious, new home for a fraction of the price of a Hawaiian condo, the pressure to leave becomes irresistible. Beyond housing, the daily cost of existence in Hawaii wears residents down. Because almost everything must be shipped in, groceries, gasoline, and building materials carry a hefty paradise tax. Hawaii residents pay the highest electricity rates in the nation, and basic insurance costs are skyrocketing. This financial pressure permeates every decision, from family planning to retirement savings. For many, the stress of living paycheck to paycheck in paradise eventually outweighs the beauty of the surroundings. The aloha spirit is hard to maintain when you are working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep a roof over your head. The limited nature of the job market seals the deal for many younger residents. The economy is heavily reliant on tourism, which provides plenty of jobs but often with low ceilings for wage growth. For ambitious graduates in fields like software engineering, finance, or specialized healthcare, the opportunities on the mainland are exponentially greater. This has led to a quiet exodus, where thousands of locals, including native Hawaiians, are relocating to the mainland, often referred to as the Ninth Island, specifically cities like Las Vegas. They move to find a sustainable future, but they do so with heavy hearts, leaving behind their culture, their land, and their families, because paradise has simply become too expensive to inhabit. 8. Michigan, when reinvention cannot outpace reality. Michigan has spent the better part of the last decade fighting to change its narrative. From the revitalization of Detroit's downtown to the burgeoning tech scenes in Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids, there are genuine pockets of optimism and renewal. However, the broader statistical picture tells a sobering story. Between April 2020 and July 2024, the state experienced a net domestic migration loss of nearly 68,000 residents. This figure serves as a stark reminder that while localized comebacks are real, they haven't been enough to counteract the deep-seated structural challenges that continue to push families toward the exit. The state's industrial legacy, once its greatest strength, remains a double-edged sword. While the auto industry is evolving, the economic footprint of manufacturing has shrunk, leaving many smaller cities and rural counties without a clear economic replacement. For many younger residents, the choice to leave is driven by a search for velocity. While jobs exist in Michigan, career trajectories in older industrial regions can feel stagnant compared to the rapid ascent available in the Sun Belt or the tech corridors of the West. It isn't just about finding a job, it's about finding a career path that moves fast. When ambitious graduates look at the uneven recovery across the state, where one zip code thrives while the next struggles, they often decide to bet their futures on states with more consistent, widespread growth. Then there is the undeniable factor of climate. Michigan winters are not merely a season, they are a lifestyle challenge. The gray skies, heavy snowfall, and icy roads exact a toll on both mental well-being and household budgets. Heating costs are significant, and the wear and tear on vehicles from salted roads adds up. When residents see peers moving to Tennessee or North Carolina, where housing is affordable, taxes are often lower, and February doesn't require a survival strategy, relocating begins to look less like abandonment and more like a strategic upgrade in quality of life. Michigan retains a fierce pride and resilience. But for nearly 70,000 people in recent years, the promise of a warmer, more dynamic future elsewhere was simply too strong to ignore. 7. Maryland. The high price of proximity to power. On the surface, Maryland appears to be an ideal place to settle down. It boasts some of the highest median incomes in the nation, top-tier public schools, and unbeatable access to the political and economic powerhouses of Washington, D.C., and Baltimore. Yet the data reveals a significant disconnect. From April 2020 to July 2024. Maryland lost over 120,000 residents to other states. This exodus, one of the largest in the Mid-Atlantic region, is driven primarily by a cost-of-living crisis that has quietly eroded the middle-class dream. The premium paid for proximity to the nation's capital has reached a tipping point where the benefits no longer clearly outweigh the costs. Affordability is the central antagonist in this story. Housing prices in the desirable suburbs surrounding the Beltway have skyrocketed, pushing homeownership out of reach for many who would have been comfortable buyers a decade ago. When you layer on high property taxes, significant insurance premiums, and the escalating costs of child care, even households bringing in six-figure incomes feel financially squeezed. Families are doing the math and realizing that their salaries would afford them a far more luxurious lifestyle in states with lower tax burdens and cheaper real estate. Beyond the financial strain, the daily grind of Maryland life plays a crucial role in the decision to leave. The region is notorious for some of the worst traffic congestion in the country. Commuting along I-95 or navigating the Beltway is a soul-crushing daily ritual that steals hours from family time and leisure. The rise of remote work acted as a catalyst, breaking the golden handcuffs that kept employees tethered to this congestion. Once professionals realized they could maintain their careers without the commute or the high cost of living, the migration to the Carolinas, Florida, and even neighboring West Virginia accelerated. Maryland offers stability and prestige, but for many the price tag in both dollars and time has simply become too high. 6. Louisiana. A storm of economic and environmental pressures. Louisiana is a state defined by a vibrant, unparalleled culture, a land of jazz, distinct cuisine, and deep-rooted community traditions. Yet, this cultural richness has not been enough to stem a massive tide of departure. Between April 2020 and July 2024, the state saw a net domestic migration loss of roughly 29,000 residents. For a state of its size, this is a staggering outflow that signals a crisis of confidence in the future. The reasons are complex, weaving together economic stagnation, public safety concerns, and an increasingly hostile environment. Economically, Louisiana has struggled to diversify beyond its traditional reliance on the petrochemical industry, ports, and tourism. While these sectors generate revenue, they haven't fostered a broad, thriving middle class or provided the kind of upward mobility seen in neighboring Texas or Georgia. Young professionals often find themselves hitting a ceiling early in their careers, prompting them to look elsewhere for stability and growth. Poverty rates remain stubbornly high, and the lack of diverse job opportunities makes leaving feel like a necessity rather than a choice for those seeking financial security. However, what truly sets Louisiana's exodus apart is the existential threat of climate change. The state is on the front lines of extreme weather, with hurricane seasons becoming more destructive and costly. Insurance premiums have exploded, and in some areas, coverage is becoming impossible to secure. Coastal erosion is physically shrinking the state, reclaiming land that families have lived on for generations. Combined with high crime rates in major cities like New Orleans and Baton Rouge, the stress of daily life is compounded. For many, the emotional and financial fatigue of rebuilding after storms, coupled with the fear of crime and economic uncertainty, has pushed them to seek safer, higher ground in other states. 5. Massachusetts, the victim of its own success. Massachusetts stands as a titan of education and economy. Home to the world's finest universities, cutting-edge biotechnology firms, and a healthcare sector that is the envy of the globe. It is a state that seemingly has it all, except affordability. This single flaw has driven a massive wave of migration, with the state losing more than 160,000 residents to other parts of the country between April 2020 and July 2020. The irony is sharp. Massachusetts is a victim of its own success, creating an economy so robust that it has priced out the very people who keep it running. The housing market is the primary engine of this displacement. During the pandemic, home prices in the greater Boston area surged violently, with double-digit percentage increases year over year. Today, the income required to purchase even an entry-level home is astronomically high, often exceeding $160,000 annually. Renters fare no better, facing some of the highest monthly costs in the Northeast. This creates a wealth trap where even highly educated professionals with good jobs find themselves unable to build equity or save for the future. The financial pressure extends beyond housing. Massachusetts residents contend with a high cost of living across the board, from groceries and utilities to childcare and insurance. For young families burdened with student loans or those caring for aging parents, the math simply doesn't work. Remote work has provided an escape hatch. Once workers realized they could keep their Boston salaries while living in New Hampshire, Maine, or the sunnier climates of the South, the choice became obvious. Massachusetts remains an intellectual and economic powerhouse, but it is rapidly becoming a place where only the wealthy can afford to stay, forcing the middle class to find their American dream elsewhere. 4. New Jersey. The breaking point of the property tax burden. New Jersey presents one of the most compelling contradictions in the American migration narrative. Geographically and economically, it occupies prime real estate, serving as the bridge between two of the nation's most vital cities, New York and Philadelphia. It boasts a highly educated workforce, diverse communities, and suburbs that are frequently ranked among the best places to raise a family in the United States. Yet, despite these clear advantages, the state is bleeding population at an alarming rate. Between April 2020 and July 2024, New Jersey lost over 92,000 residents to domestic migration. This isn't a trickle, it's a steady stream of departures that signals a fundamental disconnect between the cost of living in the Garden State and the value residents feel they receive in return. The primary antagonist in this story is no secret: property taxes. New Jersey consistently holds the title for the highest property tax rates in the nation. For countless homeowners, the annual tax bill isn't just a fee, it is a financial burden equivalent to a second mortgage or a luxury car payment, year after year. When you combine this with home prices that have appreciated significantly and insurance premiums that are climbing across the board, the cost of entry for the New Jersey lifestyle becomes prohibitive. Even households bringing in substantial dual incomes often find themselves living paycheck to paycheck, allocating a massive percentage of their earnings just to keep a roof over their heads. The dream of homeownership here comes with a monthly price tag that never truly ends, even after the mortgage is paid off. This financial pressure is compounded by the daily grind of commuting. Before the pandemic, residents tolerated high costs because proximity to high-paying jobs in Manhattan or Philadelphia was non-negotiable. However, the widespread adoption of remote and hybrid work models has shattered that paradigm. Once professionals realized they didn't need to be within a 60-minute train ride of Penn Station 5 days a week, the calculus changed instantly. Suddenly, the high taxes and tolls seemed less like a necessary investment and more like a bad deal. Consequently, thousands of families have packed up for Pennsylvania, where a short drive across the Delaware River can mean saving thousands of dollars annually in taxes alone. Others have looked further south to the Carolinas, Florida, or Texas, trading the Northeast's hustle for warmer weather and a significantly lower cost of living. While New Jersey remains a hub of culture and opportunity, the sheer expense of maintaining a life there has forced many loyal residents to make a pragmatic, rather than emotional choice to leave. 3. Illinois. A crisis of confidence and fiscal stability. Illinois has been grappling with population loss for over a decade, but the acceleration seen in recent years is nothing short of historic. From April 2020 through July 2024, the state experienced a net domestic migration loss of more than 400. To put that into perspective, that is roughly the equivalent of the entire city of Minneapolis emptying out. Unlike other states where migration trends ebb and flow, Illinois' decline has become an entrenched pattern, suggesting deep structural issues that go beyond temporary economic shift. The state is facing a crisis of confidence, where residents no longer trust that their financial future is secure within its borders. The driving force behind this exodus is a punishing cost of living, primarily fueled by the state's fiscal health or lack thereof. Illinois homeowners face some of the highest property tax burdens in the country, rivaling New Jersey. These taxes aren't just high, they are often seen as yielding diminishing returns. Residents in middle-class suburbs find themselves paying exorbitant rates that do not always translate into better services or infrastructure. When families look just across the border to Indiana, Wisconsin, or Iowa, they see communities where housing is affordable and tax bills are a fraction of what they pay in Illinois. This stark contrast makes the decision to relocate financially obvious for many, especially retirees on fixed incomes who simply cannot afford the annual tax hikes. Chicago, the state's economic engine, plays a complex role in this narrative. While it remains a global city with immense cultural capital, it is also a source of frustration for many departing residents. Concerns regarding public safety, crime rates, and the general cost of city living have pushed families toward the exits. Furthermore, the state's long-term financial liabilities, particularly its massive unfunded pension obligations, cast a long shadow over the future. Residents fear that the only solution to these debts will be even higher taxes down the road. This looming uncertainty creates an environment where leaving feels like the safer bet for long-term wealth preservation. It is not that Illinois lacks opportunity, it is home to world-class universities and Fortune 500 companies, but the financial baggage attached to living there has become too heavy. As remote work untethers employees from downtown Chicago offices, the Illinois exodus continues to reshape the Midwest, proving that even a state with immense resources cannot retain its people if the price of staying is too high. 2. New York, the Empire State's affordability crisis. New York is a brand as much as it is a state, a global symbol of ambition, culture, and resilience. However, the population data from the last 4 years paints a picture of a place that is becoming uninhabitable for the average person. Between April 2020 and July 2024, New York saw a net domestic migration loss of roughly 966,000 residents. This is the second largest numerical decline in the entire country, a staggering figure that underscores a massive demographic shift. What is perhaps most concerning is the demographic profile of those leaving. It isn't just retirees seeking sun. It is working-class families, young professionals, and even high earners who have decided that the New York premium is no longer worth paying. The core of the problem is a relentless affordability crisis. In New York City and its surrounding suburbs, the cost of housing has detached from reality for most households. Rents have surged to record highs, often swallowing 50% or more of a tenant's income, while the entry price for buying a home remains out of reach for all but the wealthiest. But the financial strain isn't limited to rent. The cost of simply existing in New York, groceries, transportation, utilities, and childcare, is significantly higher than the national average. When you add in one of the highest tax burdens in the United States, the pressure becomes suffocating. For a family trying to save for college or retirement, the math in New York is brutally difficult. Every dollar earned feels like it is immediately spent just to maintain the status quo. Quality of life issues have also moved to the forefront of the decision-making process. While New York City retains its magnetic pull for the young and ambitious, many longtime residents cite a sense of burnout. The hustle culture, combined with long commutes, crowded infrastructure, and rising concerns about disorder and safety, has worn people down. The pandemic acted as a powerful accelerant, proving that careers in finance, media, and tech could continue without the physical presence in a Manhattan office. Suddenly, the door was open to move to Florida, North Carolina, or the Jersey suburbs, where space is abundant and the pace of life is more manageable. New York will always be a powerhouse, but the sheer scale of this outflow is a warning. When a state becomes an exclusive club for the ultra-rich, it loses the diverse, vibrant middle class that makes it truly thrive. 1. California, the Golden State's unprecedented exodus. For decades, California was the ultimate destination, the end of the rainbow, where the American dream went to flourish under sunny skies. It symbolized limitless possibility, from Hollywood to Silicon Valley. But in a stunning reversal of history, California has become the primary source of domestic migration to the rest of the country. From April 2020 through July 2024, the state experienced the largest domestic population loss in the nation, with more than 1,234,000 residents packing up and moving to other states. No other state comes close to this volume of departure. The Golden State is losing its shine not because it lacks beauty or innovation, but because the practical reality of living there has become a financial nightmare for millions. Housing is the undisputed driver of this mass migration. In major coastal metros like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego, the median home price has climbed to levels that are mathematically impossible for the average family to afford. We are talking about modest, starter homes costing upwards of $1 million. Renters are equally besieged, facing monthly payments that could fund a mortgage on a mansion in the Midwest. This housing crisis has a domino effect. When 60% or 70% of income goes to housing, there is nothing left for savings, emergencies, or leisure. The California dream has effectively been gated off by a price tag that excludes the middle class. Beyond housing, the cumulative cost of living acts as a death by 1,000 cuts. Californians pay some of the highest state income taxes in the country, along with the highest gas prices and expensive utilities. Then there are the environmental stressors. The psychological weight of perennial wildfire seasons, drought restrictions, and the threat of smoke-filled skies adds a layer of anxiety to daily life. Remote work was the final key that unlocked the exit door. Once tech workers and creatives realized they could keep their California salaries while living in tax-free Texas, scenic Nevada, or affordable Arizona, the floodgates open. They aren't leaving because they hate California. They are leaving because they want a quality of life that California can no longer provide, one where they aren't financially stressed every single day. This exodus is reshaping the entire U.S. map as over 1 million former Californians take their culture, politics, and wealth to new corners of the country.